Hello, everybody, and welcome to my talk. As he said, I'm Markus Thömmes. It's a German name, so thanks for pronouncing it correctly. And I'm with IBM. I'm a software engineer inside of IBM, and I'm working on IBM Cloud Functions and or Apache OpenWhisk, respectively. And I've been one of the persons hosting IBM Cloud Functions through the last 3 years, from its inception as a prototype to today's version of a full-fledged product. And in that time, we had lots and lots of battles to fight. And today I want to talk you through one of those battles, one particular hard night and the next day that we had, to give you an idea of what it takes to actually build and provide that service for you and what you are actually missing out on, basically. Who knows the PagerDuty alert sound? Couple of nods, got roughly like PagerDuty alert, PagerDuty alert. And what it means is, night is over, and I have to leave my bed, I have to open the laptop, which is way too bright for my sleepy eyes. And what greets me is something like this. Lots of alerts hitting up, and now I have to make sense out of that. I have to dig in. And in that particular night that I was having to get out of bed, the system looked roughly like this. Like the queue and the end user latency was going up. And that's usually a very bad sign. So what's actually going on? So I SSH to one of the machines and have a look at all the data, and holy cricket, it's Bitcoin miners. Bitcoin miners in a serverless system. Oh boy. Okay, let's take a step back. Why is that bad? And what is that queue that I was talking about? What does latency mean in that sense? Let me quickly introduce you into how a serverless platform actually works behind the rainbow, so to say. Well, it's a lot like a car park, and it's a lot like a car park in the sense of you have a lot of uniformly formed parking slots where you try to fit in as many uniformly sized cars as you can. Cars are usually come in a certain width, in a certain length, and whatnot, right? So the assumption is cars are uniform. Turns out cars are not uniform. We all know the guy who owns a Dodge Ram and takes at least 2 parking spots, if not 3. And it turns out, no, cars are definitely not uniform. And in our picture, this truck, or whatever you want to call this, is what resembles a Bitcoin miner for a serverless system. So how is the serverless system built, and what does that actually mean? So Apache OpenWhisk and/or Cloud Functions, and what I say right now is true for both of them because Cloud Functions is entirely based on Apache OpenWhisk, so the architecture will be the same. Apache OpenWhisk uses Docker to put the workload into containers. And those containers are what, in our picture, are the cars that you try to fit into the car park. So you see below the three machines that you see below, and yes, these are servers. These are servers. You see the machines there, and they are running a Docker engine, and the containers are the cars, as I said. So what happens now if a request comes into the system is it goes through the controller, it is authenticated and whatnot, and is then put on a queue, which is Apache Kafka in our case. And that's what the queuing that you've seen on the slide before, that's what that means. If that goes up, that means the Kafka queue is rising. And why would the Kafka queue rise? Well, because the system is full. If you try to fit more cars into a car park than there are slots in the car park, there will be a queue in front of the car park. And what happens if there is a queue in front of a car park? You get a lot of angry people. And if people get angry in front of the car park, they start honking. And honking translated to a serverless hosted platform means people open service tickets against you. And that's some of the nice alerts that we've seen earlier. That's when latency grows up. And that's actually the latency curve as well. Like when the queue rises, like in a car park, the latency until you get your parking slot rises as well. And that's the end user latency that you've seen going up there. So back to our story. On that particular night, it was pretty clear pretty quickly that the user was creating some free accounts to abuse the free tier that Olivier has mentioned before. So they created lots of accounts and ran just below that threshold. So that's not good. So I decided that night to block all of these accounts because that's malicious action. and back to sleep for me it is. The next day, I actually had a pretty good night's sleep, a little bit sleepy, so I go into the office and start to explain to my colleagues what happened last night and what was going on. And then I'm in the middle of the conversation when it goes, pager duty alert again. And when there's a pager duty alert in the office, that's actually pretty interesting because it feels a lot like in those movies when there are several people on a submarine and then a red alert light goes off like those. And everybody starts, okay, let's get really focused and let's get this really quick. It's a nice atmosphere. Looking into the system, we know that picture. It's the same as last night. And could it be? Yes, it could be. It's Bitcoin miners again. But this time, it's not only one bit. It's not some accounts, but it's clearly automatically generated accounts. So there's no way we can get behind them and try to manually block all of these accounts out. There's no way. So we need detection. And there's a lot of fuss there's a lot of fuss about artificial intelligence and neural networks and all that kinds of stuff. So maybe we can use those to identify Bitcoin miners, but maybe something stupid works as well. So, and by the way, it's not stupid if it works. We literally use that snippet to block out the miners in the first place. So we got to know that all of these were using a specific query parameter, so we just took that query parameter out in our routers, and no more requests coming in with that. That's, as I said, it's not stupid if it works, but it won't work forever. They will figure that out. But it gives us a time to calm down. And calming down in such a situation is very, 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 very important. You have to fix it for the users first, and we did that with that snippet, and now we have to fix it properly. So how do we fix that properly? How do we attack that? Well, for once, we need to drain our queues quicker than we did right now. Like, imagine the system completely filled up with trucks, and then the queue also filled up with trucks. The only way for us to drain this is to execute all of this. Like in a car park, there's a street in front of the car park, and it's usually one way. You cannot get a car out left or right. You have to get it in, and then you have to get it out again. So that's essentially what we're doing is filter out at the beginning of the platform if you're allowed to do something, and then check after a queue again. Pretty simple, but pretty powerful. The next one, and that's pretty interesting actually, is scanning. Scan and try to figure out if somebody is doing something pretty wrong. In our case, Bitcoin mining. And that ranges from simple string comparisons like checking if the action contains Bitcoin or simple stuff like that, to actual process analysis, looking which kernel calls are made, looking which network connections are opened, all that kinds of stuff. It's not bulletproof, but it gives us a very high hit rate on people actually doing bad stuff. And yes, people are creative, and they build stuff like that, like string concatenations to like bit plus coin, so we cannot match on Bitcoin, stuff like that, or base 64 Bitcoin to something else, you name it. But actually, as I said, we have a pretty good hit rate by now. And the third and most important thing is make it unattractive, like don't allow connections to mining pools, or turn trucks into cars by limiting the amount of CPU that they can actually consume in the end. Well, all of this gives me a very good night's sleep as well. And the bottom line for you is that you can have a very, very good night's sleep as well, because I'm one of the persons caring for that, and I have a whole bunch of other persons with me who care for all of this. And this is actually one of the serverless promises. It's, yes, it's still servers, but you don't have to care, nor do you have to do anything to keep it up and running. That's what we do. Bottom line is, use IBM Cloud Functions and sleep better. And the second thing I want to say, join the community, contribute to Apache OpenWhisk. You'll find me with the bat sign on Slack, so put up the bat sign in the night sky, and I come around. Have a good night's sleep, and thank you very much.